perpetually curious about the lessons learned on Wall Street and the strategies put in place to restore hope and trust. As far as I'm concerned, no one can explain what happened and what needs to happen better than my dad, Jim Donley. With over 40 years in the industry, he's here today to talk about the unique part he serves and the mass transformation that's happening in the industry. I'm Erin Donley, and this is Reveal What's Real. Dad, thank you so much for joining me, and I'm so thrilled that you're here today. I just had to say that, you know, our Irish heritage made us incredible whiskey drinkers. Right. We both have an affinity for Canadian clubs, so let's start this interview out right.
Cheers, Erin.
Cheers. So I want the focus of today to be about your career for the most part. It's always fascinated me how much you liked your work and how hard you've worked throughout your lifetime. Let's start today. Tell us how you landed in the financial and the brokerage industry.
Oh, that's great. I love to tell this story. We grew up, as you knew, in a very, very poor environment. And I always said to myself, if I could ever work my way out of this, where I could have a $100 bill in my pocket, I would do anything. So when I graduated from college, I got into working in sales at U.S. Steel. I think I've always had an inclination towards sales. Just my personality, it's the way it's been.
Yeah.
And I was making $600 a month, which back then, you know, we had a couple of children. You weren't there yet, I don't think, but $600 a month was a nice living then.
Really?
You know, back then.
Yeah.
But I joined the reserves, the Army Reserves. I was a military policeman. And I was in charge of the raffle tickets every weekend when we would meet, and I would sell more raffle tickets than anyone else could ever sell. So the commander of the reserve unit was a stockbroker. And he came up to me one day after I sold this gazillion tickets, and he said, "What do you do?" And I told him I'm a salesman for U.S. Steel, and he says, "Well, what do you make?" And I said, "Well, I make $600 a month." And I said, "What do you do?" And he said, "I'm a stockbroker." And I said, "Well, what do you make?" He said, "Well, I made $1,000 yesterday." And I thought for a minute, and I said, "I want to do that. How do I do that?"
Yeah.
And he hired me.
Really? Just like that?
43 years ago.
Wow.
Yep, I've been doing it ever since.
God. So, right away, did you start making that money?
Oh.
$1,000 a day?
That's another great story. You can ask your mother about this one.
Right.
I had all these illusions that I would just step in there because I was always been fairly self-confident. And I had these illusions I would step in there and just make lots of money real
Knock
quick.
them dead.
Yeah. And if you remember back to the $600 a month story, well, my very first month in the business, they said you could either go on straight commission or we will pay you a small salary, like $300 a month. Mm-hmm. And I said to myself, why would I take $300 a month? You know, there's no, you know, I was already making $6 in my old job, you know. I want to make what I can make.
Yeah.
And it was a straight commission business, still is today. The harder you work, the more you get. So the very first month, I came home and handed your mother the monthly check, which was for $80. So we went from 600 to 80. She wasn't very happy with that.
No.
But we kept progressing and kept progressing and kept progressing, and the rest is kind of history.
Is it just kind of like any business that you start for yourself? The first year or two is pretty slim until you really get your foundation?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a great business. I tell people this all the time because it's basically having your own individual company without the capital investment. Because the firm you work for, in my case, Wachovia Securities and now Wells Fargo Advisors, you know, provides everything you need, and you keep a portion of the fees that you generate, and they keep a portion. So you're basically in business for yourself, but
yeah.
You don't have to start a business. There's no expenses. They pay for your secretary and pay for everything else. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So looking back on it, and especially when you first started out, what strengths did you naturally have in this industry, and which of those strengths was reflected from your upbringing?
Mm-hmm. I think I've always had the ability, and this is why I love your show so much. You're probably going to edit this out, by the way.
Just say it.
Okay. Reveal what's real. I've always had the ability to just say what's on my mind. And I've always had the ability to not be, I guess it's the right word is pompous. I've made a lot of mistakes, and I'm willing to share my mistakes with anyone who wants to hear them.
Yeah.
You know, and I think people want to deal with people who are real. That's why I think your show is going to do really well. Because being real, in business especially, and life too, but in business, you tend to surround yourself and gather in people because people like to deal with real people.
Yeah.
That's the way it is.
Yeah. You're great at delivering like the hard truths, you know, the things people don't want to hear. You're great at delivering it in a way that makes it easy to hear, or it doesn't like damage them, you know? And is that a skill that you've had to strengthen over the years, where you kind of fierce in your feedback and then you learned how to have a little more finesse with it?
I think if one of the big lessons I learned early on in the brokerage business, especially when I got into management, I wasn't a very good broker, by the way, or financial advisor. You know, I was too much of a gambler type. And that's not good. That's not good in this business. You know, you have to look at long-term plans and things like that. But what I learned early on, that, you know, the more genuine you are with people, the more you attract, the more people you attract. So I always tried to be a good listener, and I was never, ever afraid to admit failure. For instance, when I became president of Wachovia Securities, the private client group, I think we had 12,000 people, and we were in the process of merging with Prudential Securities. And I went out there and told everyone how great this is going to be. Okay. Well, the very first day that we merged the two computer systems together, Prudential's and Wachovia's, it blew up. We could not do business. So I had to get on this conference call and tell 16,000 people, we screwed up. And I had no reservation about saying that. We screwed this up.
Nice.
You know,
yeah.
Rather than making excuses for it or anything,
yeah.
I just said it what it is, you know?
Right.
And I've had many people over the years tell me that was kind of a bonding thing to them, that someone could admit that.
Absolutely. I mean, we all screw up, and it's just so nice to have someone who's in a high position admit that it's going on from a company perspective as well. I think that's excellent. Well, so one thing that I've always been fascinated with as your daughter is you have a really superb relationship with money. A lot of money has come in your life and gone and come and gone. You seem to have a really good relationship with the large flow of it all. And so I'm wondering, how did you get comfortable with this kind of risk?
If you look into the history of business, which I studied early on, you will find that the successful businesses, not only in America, but in the world, are people that are willing to take risk. I could give you example after example of both failures and huge successes. McDonald's hamburger. Ray Kroc started McDonald's hamburger with one little store. He could have been very happy selling, 3,000 hamburgers in his little store. But he felt like he was onto something, so he took the risk of building one location, then two, then three.
Yeah.
An example after example of that throughout the country. If you're not willing to take risk in this world, you're going to be just an average kind of person. And that's okay, because the world needs average kind of people. But I didn't want to be average.
Yeah.
I've always had a saying that the worst thing you could ever put on my tombstone is Jim Donley, an average kind of guy. I didn't want that.
No doubt.
So in order to get there, you need to take risk.
Yeah.
So I got comfortable with it.
So, okay, you've had big wins and you've had big losses. How have you processed the intensity of these extremes? What do you do to kind of like find balance within yourself during these times? Because I think you and I are like this. We both are pretty comfortable with the extremes, but it's like the in-between stages where there can be a lot of discomfort, a lot of processing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
You know, when the banks collapsed in 2008, I had another huge extreme, from up here to down here. And how did I process that? I think the way I did it was I always remembered that I could do it again. You You know, and even though I'm 67, which a lot of people think is old, you know, if I had to, I'd start today and do it again. You know, that's just the way I am.
Yeah.
And I think that's what got me through the low periods. Because I knew that I had the ability to get to the high period, and if I lost it, I'd start over and get back there again.
It's like the one consistent. You know you have this ability to jump back on the horse.
At some point, I'm going to get old enough and it ain't going to happen. So I'm going to have to be a little bit more risk adverse. Okay?
Yeah.
But we're not there yet, thank God. Yeah.
So there's so much judgment and negative publicity about everything that's happened on Wall Street. What went wrong from your perspective, and what did you see coming? What destruction did you see that eventually wound up happening?
Yeah. There's a lot of misconception about that. I don't know what the exact number is today, but when I was running the branches, there was like 400,000 financial advisors across the country. 390,000 or some ridiculous percentage of these people are well-intentioned, very good people, interested in helping their clients. But you're always going to have a small percentage of people that get caught up in greed, get caught up with the use that they have other people's money to work with, so it's not really their risk, it's the other person's risk. So they don't look at it like it's their money. But greed is the number one thing I think that ruined them. And that's, we've been through cycles like that before in a lot of businesses.
Yeah.
And right now, in fact, I think the sports profession, the NFL and the NBA, are at a very critical point in their juncture because it's carried away. Greed has gotten a hold of these people that are making $150 million a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you were in the industry and you witnessed greed, did you call people out on it?
Erin, it's complicated because we were not in the business of, in my particular company, we were not in the business of greed. Greed comes from the big investment banks, the ones that take huge bets with clients' money. We were just dealing with people individually. So I never really witnessed huge amounts of greed, other than the fact that I had to dismiss some financial advisors who we caught, that didn't have the client's best interest at heart.
Sure.
But that was on a much smaller scale. The greed that brought the market down are the big investment banks, Lehman Brothers, for instance, in New York, that took huge bets on the housing market because they never thought they could lose. But I was never really there to see that. That was not part of what I did. I was in the retail side of it, just dealing individually with people.
Did you have an intuitive sense that things were about to collapse in some way?
Yeah, you hope that it can always be avoided.
Yeah.
Wall Street, always has a way to create new products and new things that are very good for the companies and in large degree very good for the clients. But when they spot something that they can really make a lot of money on, the big investment banks, they get carried away. And that's what happened this time in the housing market.
I think it happens in every industry.
It could.
It does.
Yeah.
And so what is needed to restore trust in this industry? Trust from our perception looking at them?
Time.
Time.
Yeah, and I think largely now there's new federal regulations which are probably gone overboard. They always do.
Yeah.
Which are going to tighten up the screws on how much risk a company can take with other people's money. And, that'll probably hurt the profits of these firms. That's why these stocks aren't doing very well right now. But eventually, time will ease that. And at some point down the road, probably not in my lifetime, but certainly in yours, there'll be another crisis at some point. That's just the way human nature is in businesses.
Is there a new kind of leader that's emerged in the industry? Does the leadership look different now?
I think in some respects the leadership is paying way more attention to risk. Maybe that they didn't pay attention to before. For instance, at Lehman Brothers, I keep using that example, but that's a classic example. If you read all the books of the collapse of Lehman Brothers, they knew the risk they were taking, but the rewards were coming in so fast that they didn't want to stop it.
Yeah.
They didn't want to stop it. So that manager today will not allow that risk because he's being scrutinized, he's being looked at, and he saw what can happen when you get really carried away with greed.
Are these leaders in the industry taking better care of themselves? Are they getting help are they addressing like the emotional turmoil that they've seen? Are they actually processing the lifestyle changes as well as the vocational changes?
Yes, and I don't think they have a choice.
Yeah.
They don't have a choice. They've had to learn to adapt to it. Like there was a funny story that someone told me about. Greenwich, Connecticut is a place where a lot of these investment bankers lived and still do. And that's why the real estate values escalated there and everything. And there was a saying in Greenwich that one of the executives said to his wife, "If you can't eat it or wear it, don't buy it." You know? So in answer to your question, they've changed their lifestyles. They've had to.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they will come back again. They will come back again. That's just the nature of these people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So today you're a motivational speaker in this industry. After your retirement, they've brought you in. What unspoken topics are you bringing to the table?
You know, what I do is just to try to get people, pretty much like you're doing right now, try to be real. I've had a long-standing history of being able to tell stories to people to get a certain point across. So basically, I'm a storyteller. I go out and I tell stories, you know, and I try to make it funny. But by being real, for instance, I'm giving a talk at Harvard here coming up, okay, and part of my talk in the very beginning is 49 years ago, I left this little steel town in Pittsburgh to go down to play football at the University of Virginia, okay. They made me go to school. It's a great institution, but I didn't want to go to school. I wanted to play football.
Yeah.
I breezed right through that university with a 2.00001 GPA, you know, and now I'm standing here at Harvard giving this talk. I mean, this is a great country, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the only reason I was able to do that is because I'm just, you know, honest and upfront with people and just say it like it is.
So you wouldn't say you're a master at numbers or anything. It's your ability just to show up and be genuine.
I'll share a story with you. When Wachovia bought out Prudential Securities, I was a regional president at the time. I had the Northeast region. And the CEO came to me and said, "Jim, I want you to be president of Wachovia Securities." And I looked at him and I said, "Danny, I can't do this. I'm not this good. You know, this is $8 billion in sales. This is 16 or 20,000 people. I'm not that good." He said, "Jim, what you don't understand is we have people to do all that. Okay, what I need you to do is to work with the people. Keep them in their seats, keep them happy, and be honest with them. Tell them what we're good at. Tell them what we're bad at. Be real."
Yeah.
And that I could do, so I accepted the position. But yeah, I mean, I'm not very good at a lot of things, but I'm just lucky in that I can talk.
Yeah. And I think that you can talk not only to the top producers, but you could talk to the woman at the front desk. And that's something I always learned from you. Every time we go out to dinner, we know the name of our waitress. She knows our names. And it becomes this like lovely relationship with whoever we're dealing with.
Yeah, thank you. That's one of my core principles.
Yeah.
There's a funny story. I had to take a flight from, I flew into New York and I had to go from LaGuardia to Newark to catch my next flight. So you can only get a cab, and it's a long cab ride. And there was an Indian cab driver, and I said to him, this is a great lesson, by the way, Erin. I said to him, when I got in the cab, I could tell he was Indian. I said, "Where are you from?" And he said, "I'm from India." And I said, "Oh, I don't know anything about India. Tell me about India." It was a 45-minute cab ride. When I dropped him off, I had never said one word. And he looked at me and he said, "Sir, you're the nicest man I ever met in my life." Oh. And I never said a word. From that point on, I learned how listening is so important.
I'm learning that too, Dad, big time.
It's important.
Yep.
Because if people tend to like you, they'll deal with you.
Yeah. Talk less, say more.
They like your core.
Yeah.
Yep. And also, if you can just follow this one philosophy, and I think Zig Ziglar said this one.
You've always loved him.
Yeah, I've listened to him 1,000 times. But his philosophy was you can get anything you want out of life if you just help enough other people get what they want.
Yeah.
See? And if you never focus on making money, if you never focus on accumulating wealth or anything like that, just help a bunch of other people do it, you will get it.
Okay, but there's a balance to that. You know, I'm deeply ingrained in this New Age spiritual community. They take that and run with it, and no one has successful business, or rarely do they have successful businesses. Where's the balance in that? Where do you see where you have to somehow choose the harder decision, the money decision, versus the helping decision?
I think you'll make that decision on your own when you get some point at the end of the month and you have $5 in your checking account.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
There is nothing wrong with getting paid for your service. Matter of fact, it's a wonderful thing. It's what's built this country and made it great. It's why all these different cultures come to America, because you can be who you want to be.
Yeah.
And you can earn what you want to earn. Now, not everyone wants to do it.
Nope.
You know, my family was school teachers. They loved it. You know, I just wanted more. That's all.
So, if you hadn't chosen this occupation, what else might you have done?
I always wanted to be a professional football player, but I wasn't good enough. I was pretty good, but I wasn't good enough. So I would have probably chosen that. The older I get and I look back, I don't think I'd change anything. I really don't.
Yeah.
I don't. I think that every step I made, even though I had to go backwards on occasion, it's been very good for me.
I mean, you've been such a hard worker all your life. Is there anything you feel like you missed out on?
Sure. Early on, I think I was a horrible father. I think I'm pretty good now.
Yeah.
But early on, I was so focused on getting my business going that, you know, there was a lot of nights I wasn't home and a lot of weekends that I would be more focused on business and rather than taking you to where you needed to go. And I would have probably changed that. But there's a couple other things I would have changed. I had a pretty bad temper early on in my life, and I learned that there's an old saying that fear is a great motivator, and I learned that it's only a very good short-term motivator, because if you look at people that manage with fear over their lifetime, either in their life or their business, it never works long-term. Hitler, you know, Gaddafi, all these people that are now crumbling. The head guy at Lehman Brothers, managed by fear, it crumbled. So it's good to get short-term things done, but long-term, it's not.
Yeah, yeah.
Does that answer the question?
It does, yeah. And you know, I just have to say, once again, like, this is why I wanted to talk about your business. And, you know, you're in a very conservative, you know, surrounded by more Republican type thinkers, and I'm out here on the West Coast in a completely different way. And I hear this judgment and anger and rage at your industry and like your kind of people. And then I hear you say things like this. And this is one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this, to show people that there are really good people in this industry. We're all thinking alike. So many things that you've said here today are spiritual teachings that you could find in a book at New Renaissance. Yeah. You know, this is a shared humanity here that I really appreciate hearing from you.
Yeah. One of the other principles that I've kind of guided myself by all my life is I believe that well over half of the people in this country believe they're victims.
Yeah.
A victim is someone who blames everything that happens to them on somebody else. My number one role is to never be a victim. Barack Obama did not cause anything. Neither did George Bush. But a lot of people blame people. If Barack Obama had done this, or George Bush would have done this. I don't believe in any of that. I don't believe in being a victim. Be responsible for yourself. Don't worry about what other people have done to you. You'll get through it. Yeah.
Dad, thank you so much. This has been so helpful, and I feel like your message is really inclusive, and that's what I hope for this show too, is that everyone can come to the table and celebrate our humanity together.
Great.
So, once again,
cheers to you,
love you
Erin.
so much.
Love you too. Thank you.
Thank you.